About another real issue that affects the country. When you elect a government or you elect leaders, you expect service delivery. But there has been delays in implementation of government projects, and now there is a team that is chaired, the cabinet committee that is chaired by CS Matiang'i, that will be looking at reviewing the implementation of programs. And now we are seeing that on page 5 of the Standard, Matiang'i meets donors to review key stalled projects. The government has convened a high-powered meeting with major international institutions funding several ventures nationwide to explain the project status. And also seeing that today there's expected that the DPP, the DCI and Anti-Graft Agency boss will be meeting donor representatives and cabinet team on status of projects amid claims of corruption, that corruption has slowed them down. So the question I want to ask you is, even as we get into this, that you're bringing now, having meetings with the donors or those that finance various projects, we are still reviewing what has happened in the past. And earlier on, we were talking with Raburu and saying that when you look at the agenda of the government, corruption appears to be the main thing that we are fighting. So unfortunate that you have to now look at what has happened and you don't get enough time to do the agenda that is supposed to roll out. So how does the government walk that path of ensuring that what has already been set out to be done has been effectively done, and also planning for the future?
Let me start. This issue of stalled projects is a real pain. All of us as leaders from our respective regions can cite 2, 3, 4 stalled projects that have been started, and a lot of taxpayers' money or donor funds have gone into it. In my county of Homa Bay, we've got an irrigation scheme called Oluch Kimira, which was supposed to irrigate about 4 sub-counties and would put us in a situation where we do not have to rely on the rain. Several billions of shillings later, the Oluch Kimira scheme has not been handed over, has not been concluded. I've got a road that runs from Mbita town to Sindo town and runs through this constituency represented by Mr. John Badi, the leader of minority in the National Assembly. A section of it has been done from Gingo all the way to Sindo, and then it has stalled, and yet a contractor had already been assigned to do that particular project. We need to understand whether it is an issue of payment or it is an issue of incompetence. The other day we were launching a hyacinth harvester, which had to be borrowed from Uganda, and yet the same government committed $1 million to buy our own hyacinth harvester. The thing has not been able to do any meaningful service. So I think this is a step in the right direction. We need to take an audit of the projects that have been initiated and also assure ourselves that the status where they are. If there are issues with funding from government, let's deal with them and make sure that those funding gaps are captured in the next budget, in the supplementary budget. If there are issues of governance and corruption, then also let's deal with them. Because, it's easy for a cabinet secretary to say that projects are stalling because they paid kickbacks to people. Let's see some action being taken. And when you say that people got kickbacks, you are just inferring that the people you work with in government are dishonest and so they are not fit for purpose. Let this go beyond mere statements. But beside the projects that have been started, the Jubilee Manifesto promised a lot of things. And that's why sometimes it's also very important that we as legislators, we play our role to put the government to task. Sometimes we go too much into our political party and political persuasions, and we forget that there is an executive that we are supposed to check, that we are supposed to oversight, that we are supposed to challenge. There are so many projects that were put up in the first manifesto of Jubilee, that were put up in the second manifesto of Jubilee, some of which have not been started 6, 7 years down the line. What is our position as Parliament? And as Parliament resumes next week, I do hope that my colleagues, we shall put aside all the illusions we have about the 2022, about handshakes and everything, and we will put this government squarely on its toes, because at the end of the day, whatever they are doing is not a favor. They chose to be elected, they chose to serve, and they must be accountable to the people through Parliament. Is that a possibility as you resume the House next week?
Oh, it is. And to add on to that, we must also understand that donor money is not free money. And the donors have a right to be concerned, because when they put in money so that projects can be completed to better the lives of Kenyans. But halfway through, projects stall, because either the budget that the government had for those projects have been tampered with, and probably it's gone into the wrong hands.
Okay.
So the donor money has been utilized, the projects have stalled, and therefore the end result of Kenyans having a better lives or improved lives out of those projects is then not realized.
All right.
So I think that they must get a good explanation as to why the money they've put in has not translated into what the vision was, you know? And really, it is about corruption. That's what it is.
Okay, so how do we do all these things and ensure that we are on course in terms of development?
See, Sam, when we talk about stored projects, and especially the losses accruing out of such stored projects, I think this is a discussion that you would need a whole session on, and especially if you were to segregate the two and talk about stalled projects at the county government level since the inception of county governments in 2013 up to today, and stored projects at the national government level, because there are two different playing fields. And if you look, for example, at the entire of the probably almost now 2 trillion shillings that has been disbursed to counties, you'd be very surprised, Sam, to see that probably out of the reports we have been getting, and I remember the other day we were debating the control of budgets report here,
right,
that probably out of that 2 trillion, maybe about a quarter of it only has been committed to projects. And out of those projects, probably more than 3/4 of those projects up to today are stalled, and you've had the input by Senator Kajwang. And so I think once if we were to debate this, we would need to really broaden this to help this country, because the reasons largely why stored projects have been that way at the county government level is purely because of corruption. Not even incompetence. Corruption is the major contributor. At national government level, then there are a whole other lot of scenarios playing out. Last week, but when I went to my own county to help commence a project that was funded by government and a donor in the year 2012 for 20 billion shillings, 3 billion paid out to a contractor that 8 years ago, and was starting last week. A dam in Kiambu.
3 billion.
So you ask yourself, a contractor has been sitting holding 3 billion since 2012 for 8 years. The project now starts there. Of course, there were many other reasons and competition, but you'll be asking yourself, if you have such projects replicated around the country, probably just 10 times only, what kind of losses are you talking about? And so I believe this idea that there be a review, and I would also want to take it in stride with the instruction by the president that there be no other new projects until we have sorted out this mess. Once we've sorted out the mess, then we can start building other new ones, and then we can have progress.
And I am looking at the report by the Standard saying that part of the projects that will be being reviewed is the Galana Kulalu irrigation project, which was to be the start of implementing that 1 million acres be under irrigation at a cost of 400 billion shillings. The Ministries of Water and Irrigation, Agriculture and Infrastructure on the spot over incomplete mega projects under their dockets. The Standard Gauge Railway, obviously, is one of those that will be looked into. And the other flagship ideas, like the digital literacy project that was to give free laptops to school-going children in class 1. I don't know how far that went after that launch. I don't know whether it was 2017 or 16.
2013.
Your final comment about all this?
There's nothing new about this. I remember in my earlier days in Parliament, the situation used to arise because permanent secretaries, accounting officers, and people who are getting projects were capitalizing on loopholes in the law. We then went on and perfected the Public Finance Management Act. If the Public Finance Management Act in its current form was respected, you would cut this problem by over 80%, because we have provided there that for a project to be awarded, a tender to be awarded to a contractor, there must be a budget. So that if you are giving out a project of 2 billion shillings to do a road, for example, you give the project out, You start rolling out the project because the money is already there. So what is at hand, over and above what my brother Matiang'i has said, and Kajwang, over and above the corruption they are talking about, there is the issue of impunity. The accounting officer, the permanent secretary who knows the provisions of the Public Finance Management Act, then just awards a tender when there's no budget. And a contractor then gets stuck up midway or whatever percentage of the project he has done, and it ends there. I therefore want to conclude by lauding the President for creating that special subcommittee headed by Matiang'i that will oversee implementation of projects. I would like to urge Matiang'i and his players to focus on the Public Finance Management Act. That is the detail that can give a cure to most of this stuff.
Right.